You are on the platform, Martin Devlin, Lachlan War, talking with you. 5:23, New Zealand Māori versus Ireland last night.
Well, the All Blacks have tried to put pressure on at scrum time, but Ireland have always managed to clear the ball. The kick is picked up by Love, and off he goes. Great run down the middle from Ruben Love. He split them open. Cullen Grace is there in support. Loves the pass back in field. Oh, what a try! Māori rugby at its best.
What a break from Ruben Love. Something out of nothing. And this is Māori All Black rugby at its best.
Yeah, great call from TJ and the crew there. I wanted to play you something happy from that game before we start talking. Chris Pollock, who is the high-performance general manager of rugby referees in New Zealand. There's just so much confusion around what's going on. Celebrating that try. And what I need to talk to you about, though, is the rigidity of these rules, especially with the deliberate knock-ons. And we saw one last night with Sean Stevenson. It's just so confusing that somebody else can determine whether or not you are deliberately knocking the ball on. Welcome to the show, mate.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, we are trying to be consistent so people can, follow it from game to game to game. Now, I'm not quite sure we're getting that right at the moment. And ideally, what they're trying to basically say is that if someone is passing the ball and a person gets in the road of that and knocks that ball on and they can't regather it, first and foremost, that's a penalty. And then the next part of the equation is, if it's a penalty, we look to see if there's a line break. And if there's a line break opportunity, then that becomes a yellow card. So, the ones we're trying to stop is where a defender gets in between the last two attackers, knocks that ball on, and it prevents that line break from happening. I think the game's got to continue to evolve, and I think we've got to take a step back and say, are we actually getting these right at the moment? Is it genuinely a player trying to have a go at the ball, or, as the law states, is it a deliberate knock forward? And I reckon there's some room for us to debate that and get better at that.
Look, it's so good to hear you say that, because you could hear the groans, from through the television screens. Andrew Mertens especially was really critical on the weekend, and I want to just emphasise here, mate, that this isn't a hack at any of the referees or anything like that. It's just trying to apply some common sense. And, rugby's such an inexact game. I mean, do you think we're lacking at the moment? Just some basic common sense. Because when I hear a TMO say he's deliberately knocked it on, I'm sitting there going, are you Kreskin, mate? Do you have ESP? How the hell do you know he's doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant thing that we're trying to work through. And the difficulty that we have is World Rugby will sit there and we have to kind of fall in line with what they're saying. So I think there's some discussion going on at the moment. My understanding after the weekend to go, have we actually got this space right? And if you think about it in Sevens is all about going, bang decision, move on, everyone gets on with the game. So in those scenarios, probably being really black and white around that stuff works quite well. I don't know if it works quite so well in 15. So okay. We've just got to talk a bit more and see whether we are getting these right. And like I said, I believe they're about to have a discussion around the space at World Rugby, and then they'll come back to us and go, this is how it needs to be ruled. We don't have a lot of latitude within our competition to drift outside of that too far, because they're trying to get the Northern Hemisphere game and the Southern Hemisphere game refereed the same way. And I get that. And it means, like, if we went off on a tangent and we're refereeing a certain way in Super Rugby or NPC, and then we've got All Blacks walking out of that competition and going into Test Rugby, that's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of stay in line with what they're doing.
Is there a Northern-Southern Hemisphere split in interpretations? Are we that far apart or a lot closer? Is that just a perception thing?
I think it's a perception thing, Matty. I mean, look, the game gets played differently in the two hemispheres. And if you just take a step back and have a look at the fact that the majority of Super Rugby gets played in pretty good weather, it's easy to play. You don't have a lot of nights like we potentially had last night, whereas in the Northern Hemisphere, that is probably more of the norm.
Yeah.
So automatically the game gets played differently. And therefore people will look at that and go, well, you guys referee it differently. Well, it's not necessarily that we referee it differently. It's just that the game gets played differently for me.
Chris Pollock is with us, high-performance referee manager here for New Zealand Rugby. Why don't World Rugby communicate more effectively? I wonder whether this is a real part of the problem, in that, putting people up and explaining things. You've got a big, loyal customer base that probably deserves a bit better communication. Would you agree?
I definitely think there is some room to move. I mean, I don't think it's all. I think we probably in New Zealand could be exactly the same. I think, when it's within our competition, there are times when we probably could communicate stuff better. So I don't solely put this at World Rugby's feet. I think as officials in the game, there are times when it'll be great for us to be able to go, you know what, we got that wrong. But just put your hand up, we got it wrong. This is the learning we've got out of it, and this is what we're going to do to be better next week. And people are humans. They're going to make mistakes, especially in a complex game like rugby. So, yeah, I think there is definitely room for that.
Look, and I say that because, we hear Television One last night said that, they had a whisper from World Rugby that the Ardie Savia situation had been got wrong and that, management was right, that he should have been back on. However, why don't World Rugby actually just come out and say that? There's nothing wrong with admitting as a human being that, we've got to stuff that up a little bit, rather than all of us just assuming that or interpreting it like that and then getting wild about it.
Yeah, my understanding that is coming. So they went through a review process with the referee team, then they're doing that kind of stuff. And the hard thing is, we are now, Wednesday afternoon, so it's coming into Wednesday morning over there, so they will have only just completed that stuff. So I would expect something to be coming out of World Rugby by the end of the week around us.
Right.
And it's not for us to come out and say that it was right or wrong. It's a World Rugby competition. Yeah.
Finally, the Ta'ava punishment. So he pleads guilty to foul play. Now, I don't know about you, Polly, but I don't know if it was foul play. Look, we're all wrapping our heads, and I'm not making any silly pun here, around the head contact. And I think most of us understand, look, it's got to be protective of the players and also for a potential lawsuit, all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know whether, to interpret that as foul play. I mean, to me, foul play is it's got to have some deliberate part of the act, does it not? And sure, there was facial contact and head contact in that. But again, just, the wording is confusing.
Yeah, and again, mate, I reckon we've got to keep evolving. So if you go back to 2019 and they brought in, it wasn't called the head contact process coming, what it was, the actual word of it was, and we went into a Rugby World Cup and we hadn't really got that right, and then they shifted it, and I think they've gotten to a better space. But we've just got to keep evolving, and we've got to get better at understanding, I think, when a tackler is really time poor, so he actually can't adjust his body height or whatever. I think everyone looks at the Angus one and goes, geez, he's bloody unlucky there, because you've got a guy who's 6'3", he's getting stepped by a back. It's really difficult for him to be able to change his body height. And I think the thing that counted against Angus was the fact that he stepped forward into it versus becoming passive, understanding that he had been beaten. And but I do believe we've got some room in there for our match officials to get better at understanding the dynamics. Like going back 18 months ago, we got Joe Smith with our full-time referee group to talk and got them onto the grass to go, well, this is what it feels like when you get beaten, and how easy is it for you to adjust your body height in that such short space of time. And I felt definitely last year, our New Zealand guys had a really good understanding of that. And we've just got to get better at being able to read those situations and not take away from the fact that safety's got to be paramount for the players.
Appreciate your time enormously. Appreciate your honesty and your thoughts and your analysis on that, mate. I think that really helps, and everyone listening, I think, will be nodding along with it. Good on you.
Yep, no, pleasure. Anytime.